and welcome to our weekly Tuesday webinar. I'm Yomika Bennett, Executive Director of the New York Charter Schools Association. I'm joined today by Susie Carello, Executive Director of the SUNY Charter Schools Institute, David Frank, Executive Director of the Charter Schools Office at NYSID, Angeli Matos, Jen Schuman, and Lori Hazley from New York City DOE, and Corey Callahan from the New York City Charter Center. Before we turn it over to David, Susie, and Lori for their updates, I have some updates from the association. First, let's close the loop on some questions and topics that have been raised on prior webinars over the course of the past few weeks. There's an update on the immunization requirement for students. The deadline to be vaccinated for students who are attending remotely will be extended 30 days if those students are only remote and if they intend to get vaccinated in those 30 days. We're dropping a link in the chat for more information. We're working with RICs across the state and with Google to ensure that charters that use Google platforms can have a data privacy agreement to meet the new 2D privacy law requirements. Stay tuned. We expect to have an agreement or template within the next month or so. There were lots of questions last week about templates for communicating a variety of issues to school communities. We've added some to our website, and again, we're dropping a link in the chat so you can check them out. If your school has communication materials that you've created that you want to share, please send them our way. As mentioned last week, the executive order allowing remote board meetings has been extended until November 3rd. In addition, last week the governor signed into law a Juneteenth state holiday, which allows but does not require employers to provide paid holidays. Some updates on the cluster initiative and the color-coded zones. We have identified a private testing resource for schools if you need access to testing outside of any state or city resources. Unfortunately, it isn't free and it doesn't take insurance, but we were able to negotiate a reduced price for tests. We're dropping a link in the chat. The governor issued an executive order authorizing DOB to withhold fiscal year 20 state aid from schools for noncompliance with color-coded zone restrictions and requirements. It's not clear, however, that there's an easy mechanism in place for DOB to actually do that. It's also not clear that any charter schools that have reached out to New York State through DOH or New York City through DOHMH or DOE would be penalized while they wait for either entity or to advise or roll out the testing program. New York State sent test kits to New York City for yellow zone schools. On Friday, Mayor de Blasio stated testing has begun and will be rolled out to schools throughout the week. New York City DOHMH said last week that they would be contacting schools. So expect to be contacted regarding the testing or see the testing program rolled out soon. If you are not contacted, let us know and we will work to find out more. The governor announced also last week the New York State vaccination program, which is an interim plan developed by the state in anticipation of efforts needed once a vaccine is improved. Important highlights from the draft plan or the interim plan are that the plan anticipates a 2-dose protocol for the vaccine. Both doses must come from the same vaccine manufacturer and must be administered within a 3 to 4 week time period. There are approximately 19.5 million New Yorkers, which means approximately 40 million vaccine doses will be needed. Schools, along with other facilities, will be designated Vaccination Administration Sites, or VAS. Each VAS will be required to be registered, and training will be required as well. In terms of prioritizing the vaccine, essential healthcare workers in areas with a high prevalence of the virus will be priority 1. Teachers and school staff are listed in phase 2 in the priority protocol for vaccination. Healthy adults and children are in the 5th and final phase. In addition to the vaccine administration effort required of schools, it's clear that there will also be a major community education effort required to implement the vaccination program. Schools will play a crucial role. The plan is interim. We need to be mindful of, and it is subject to change. It was developed without knowing many of the factors and does not lay out any important details. However, given that, I do recommend you review the plan and start considering now some of the things that your school would do as part of the effort, as well as any questions you might have. Again, we're dropping a link in the chat. Of course, we will continue to follow developments and keep you updated. A vaccine, though, means hope. As we've said all along, we're all in this together. When we get through this, I look forward to seeing you all in person on the other side. Finally, please join us and almost 500 other charter stakeholders starting tomorrow for our statewide virtual charter conference. We have over 80 sessions for a variety of audiences, so check out the schedule on our website or join us for just one session all day or for all 3 days. We hope to see you there. Having said all of that, Susie, Lori, David, welcome. Turning it over to you for updates for your team. Susie, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Yumika. Wanted to just remind our schools there's a couple of things that the team is asking for through Epicenter. One was your beds day enrollment number, just stick it in there. We've got 90 out of 193 operating charters. So we need a few of you to let us know what that count was. Also, just as a reminder, we're all remote and things are always moving quickly. If you can make sure that the best contact information, if we need to get someone quickly, usually via cell or text, please make sure that information is updated. That would be super helpful to us. Barb, of course, is all excited. Barb and Connor and John, the Institute Finance team for the November 2nd audit due dates. And then just a couple of quick follow-ups from my email from last week. In addition to some time with the Institute Legal Eagles tomorrow at the association, I'm pretty sure it's tomorrow. If you saw my note about the new leadership at NACSA, the National Association of Charter School Authorizers, fellow Hoosier Kariga Rausch just took the helm there, and I couldn't be more excited. I spoke a little bit about one of the presentations that the Institute team is doing called Active Ingredients. And if you want to know more about active ingredients, stay tuned, reach out to us at the Institute. We've got some great school partners, Brim Street Academy, Autism Charter School, and also Capital Prep is working with us to figure out how we can have additional measures of school success, especially in a time where standardized measures are sometimes elusive, shall we say. And then I think the last thing I wanted to share with folks is to put in a special plug for the awards ceremony. I think maybe the association people have talked more about this. We're looking forward to the conference this week, but a special plug for the clever rituals and routines and videos and other ways that you are helping kiddos remember to be super safe and use PPE appropriately. So I think that's all of mine.
All right, great, thank you. David, do you have any updates for us?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for everyone who filled out an instructional model survey. We were able to look at information on instructional modalities across the state, and it was interesting to see that 64% of schools are going remote, 34% are hybrid, and just 2% are in person. Of the Board of Regents authorized charter schools, half are remote, 43% are hybrid, and 3% are in person. So it's pretty interesting to see. The district schools are a little different. 22% are remote, 59% are hybrid, and 19 are in person. So having that information is helpful. We were talking to someone on my staff. Our data analyst, Janet Klein, was talking to American Dream Charter School, and they asked, what does the modalities look like in the Bronx? And we're able to get schools that information. So we're still analyzing the information, but I think it's good stuff to have. Otherwise, we're collecting our audited financials in the SED through the SED portal, again, due on November 2nd. And that's all the news I have to print for today.
All right, appreciate that. Thank you, David. Hi, Lori, do you have an update for us?
Hey everyone, good afternoon. My only update for folks is just a reminder for DOE authorized charter schools that your first deadline for reporting requirements is November 2nd. So if anyone has any questions or needs the calendar of reporting requirements, you can reach out to charteroversight at schools.nyc.gov, and I can make sure you get that. But yep, November 2nd for the first round of reporting requirements.
All right, great, thank you. Before we turn it over to questions in the Q&A, we do have a couple of questions received in advance. The first question is regarding 990 hours. And so we keep hearing questions and answers, and schools continue to be confused about the issue of 180 days versus 990 hours, or 990 hours. Many of the calls, the 990 hours has seemed to be the rule of thumb, but some schools are reporting that they believe that they have to have 180 days. Is there a definitive answer here? Who can help us out? David, Susie, or Lori? Do you have an answer for us?
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, in September of 2018, the Regents adopted a new minimum instruction requirement, which amended previous requirements that were in effect. You might know it as the 180-day requirement. Now there's an annual aggregate number of hours over 180 days. So you need to have a minimum, depending on what your grade level is, of 900 or 990 hours over a minimum period of 180 days. And I'm going to, there's actually a great resource that the State Ed Department put out on this, not my office, but our State Aid office. And I will put that in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Before I move on to the next one, I just want to ask Susie, Lori, do you want to add anything to that?
No.
Okay.
I think the only thing that might be worth additional clarification, only because these are questions we've received in the past. So, for example, when the DOE, the New York City DOE produced its calendar, it doesn't have 180 days, I believe. And so just getting each of the authorizers current understanding that remote instruction counts towards those minimum requirements.
Absolutely.
Great. And for those of you playing along by phone, David and Susie, David nodded, Susie gave the thumbs up.
All right, great.
Thank you, Mika.
Yeah, sure. Looking ahead now to Thanksgiving and other winter holidays, everyone's thinking about travel, or should be thinking about travel, and of course that impact and how that would impact schools and their staff and students who may travel to any other states. As we all know, New York State has a list of the states to which, if you travel, you will be required to quarantine upon your return to New York State. We're going to drop that list, a link to that list in the chat. It updates regularly. So the question that I think we want to start a conversation about is talking about how to deal with, address, think about students and staff who may be traveling and the quarantine that they may find when they come back, and how does that impact school operations and what to do. So that's a long lead into the question. How am I going to put this? Well, I'll just say it. So if a staff member or student travels to any of these states, they would not be able to attend a school for 2 weeks following their trip. Some universities, Susie, I'm looking at you. You may be key on this one. Some universities have anticipated this issue and are beginning their break for the term after Thanksgiving and running through January. So curious, Susie, Lori, and David, if you have any thoughts or initial recommendations to schools. Understanding we're at a very early point, you may not have firm answers, but just curious if you have anything at this point when staff and students might be in the process of making plans for holiday travel. Do you have any initial thoughts or recommendations for them?
I'm happy to dive in just based on what some of the state university thinking is, which, first and foremost, all the way through this, trust in our kind of fellow collegial communities is significantly important in making this work, right? I'm gonna try, we do from time to time go into the office. There are more than one of us there at the Institute. We trust each other to make sure that we are following all of the right protocols, which are similar to yours. We have an app that we have to use that before we go in. There is no one there to take our particular temperatures, but there's hand washing protocols, wearing a mask, all of those things. And it really is about, you know, owning the trust I know that my colleagues have in me to not come in if I'm not healthy, etc. So trust and community, as always, significantly important. You guys are living that every day. And in addition, you know, in line with what the State University of New York has come up with, we've had some schools and some of the networks reach out to start kind of explaining this thinking as well. And a couple of them extending through the end of the year holidays. Because again, we know that there are multiple faith-based celebrations at the end of the year and beginning of the year, as well as New Year's. And so folks are really beginning to think about a potential in-person date that extends beyond that New Year's holiday, with 2 weeks of time for people to quarantine. And as much as, you know, we all like to have our own little healthy, safe pod, we also know that, you know, if my dear parents were not, you know, partying up above, it would be hard for me to not go see them this year. And I know that's the same for many of you. So I think SUNY's thinking was how to best honor that for staff and students and families. And I know that our schools are, I'm beginning to hear your plans, and I know that our schools are thinking about that as well.
All right, great, thank you. David or Lori?
I've nothing else to add other than there are a lot of resources. I see that Anna posted one in the chat from the governor and the Department of Health. And we particularly have a lot more flexibility now that many of our programs are providing remote instruction, but there are strict quarantine requirements. Like Susie said, you know, it's difficult for people to be away from family for so long, and you know, I'm sure it'll be a very challenging time of year.
Hi, Lori, do you want to add something?
Sure. I would just say, I know a lot of the schools that I've spoken to have been really intentional so far throughout this year with talking to their staff, surveying staff as they made plans to return for in-person or not. And so my thought was that folks should, one thought is that they could continue in that path and kind of see if they can find out what folks' plans are and try to anticipate and plan for that for after the holidays. And I think that actually goes for staff and students. And I think that perhaps what the universities are doing is a model to look at for schools that find that they do have a lot of staff that do plan to travel out of state. I know that many schools included in their opening plans and in internal HR documents, policies for when staff need to quarantine and what that means in terms of leave policies. So I would just say to make sure you stay consistent with those HR policies that you've set, consistent with them across your staff. Or if you find that those policies need tweaking, make sure that you're over communicating with staff about those leave policies.
Excellent advice for everyone. Thank you. Another question here now about attendance. When schools are reporting daily attendance data, should they differentiate between in-person and remote present and in-person and remote absent? Or do you, authorizers, want simply present and absent regardless of the setting? And anyone can jump in here.
While we don't have a requirement regarding attendance, I think a best practice is that you have to balance the onerous data collection requirements or responsibilities to what information do you need to paint a picture of what your school has been doing this academic year. And so having a system that at least tracks what modality students are present in, whether that's remote or in person, or not, would be the bare minimum that schools, the attendance data that schools would collect. And I think that it's a great idea to do. Just make sure that the systems that you're putting into place are transparent and uniform, and that teachers are on the same page collecting that information.
Okay, Lori, Susie, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I agree, David. I agree with what you said. I think that, you know, to be honest, I have not thought about what we as the DOE as authorizer would be asking for in next year, looking back at this year. But I think that for your schools, for your own purposes, I think that your data system should be able to give you both rates, just so that you can make adjustments to your own outreach and engagement strategies for your different groups of people, for different groups of students. Those that are at home and those that are in person. So I do think best practice would be for your data systems to be able to track attendance by both groups.
All right, great. Our final question that we have in advance is, what guidance or requirements are there for students who to wear PPE, specifically masks? What guidance or requirements are there for students who are in a school setting who refuse to wear masks? Or again, obviously what we're trying to find out is just following up on what we're hearing in the news and what we're hearing from schools. And specifically, there was an article in the New York Post on October 3rd about students not wearing masks, and they quoted the DOE saying that a school can request that a student be moved to all remote learning after 3 documented instances of refusal to wear a mask, followed by efforts to educate the students, speaking with parents, and working with school social workers. We're just trying to figure out then, so do you have, again, guides and requirements that schools can firmly rely on requiring, about the requirement to wear masks? And again, you can answer at will here.
So we don't have guidance or requirements. That's a good set of questions. I will say 2 things. One is I'll circle back around with our council. And if you, again, want to take advantage of the time with SUNY Legal Eagles, that's probably a good question to get more in-depth information from them about. This is one of those things that goes back to what's your attendance policy, and it's not about attendance, but setting your policy, making sure that you are applying your policy. This is like your screening policy. And again, if you have a child that's non-compliant, then first and foremost, I think working it out with a parent who's likely to be your best ally in creating all sorts of behavior opportunities for kids to succeed while they're at school, I think is one of the things teachers and schools are really good at. But we'll circle back around. Thanks, Anna. Yes, I saw she's doing the Ask the Lawyer session. So you might get more legal input from them, but I think the other piece of this is to have a policy. You have a number of other parents whose children are also in school who are expecting for students to wear a mask. And it sounds to me like the guidance from New York City DOE is pretty spot on.
All right, great. Anna, I think that's it. That's all we have for our questions in advance. I'm going to turn it over to you for the Q&A.
Great. And so don't go far, Yomika, because I'm actually going to kick the first question to you. But Corey, if you have any thoughts you'd like to add, or any tea leaves that you've read, any predictions if there will be changes to revenue for this year, or is it still TBD until after the election? And I'm just going to add to this person's question, the election is only 2 short weeks away. So number one, have a plan to vote, all you party people who are listening. But number 2, Yomika, with the election 2 short weeks away, if the answer is that we're still waiting until after the election, are we talking 2 weeks and a day? Are we talking 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, January? What's your crystal ball? How's it functioning today?
As I pull out my crystal ball that you all can't see behind my wonderful picture here, it truly is TBD. And the factors that would affect that, of course, are how much the state believes that they will get, that the funding will come, which it may sound like a non-answer, but really what I'm saying to you is that the factors that determine whether or not there are changes in the funding are based on what we see from the feds, but also what the state, in this case largely the governor and the division of the budget, right? What do they believe? And I can't answer that question. So, but what I will say to you is that if I have to put aside the crystal ball and truly make some predictions, my prediction is that we may not have a quote-unquote answer on the election, November 4th, because of things like mail-in ballots and those kinds of things. And that may just require that we wait longer. So I would say we could see something early January. I would not be necessarily surprised about that. Again, it all depends on how the election results roll out. And when we know that, and if we think about just the logistics of a session, making sure that people can, I guess, get on their Zoom calls and do what they need to do and review bills and review those kinds of things, that will happen at a time of the end of the year holidays and other kinds of things. So we have all kinds of factors that are going to come into play. So I know that's not a succinct answer or a direct answer in terms of yes or no. The best answer is probably I don't know, but those are my best predictions that we could see it sometime in January.
And always appreciate when Yumika gets out her crystal ball. So very helpful to hear. On a somewhat related note, in the sense of asking people to speak to and give guidance to something that may not be their bailiwick or necessarily their full expertise. I don't want to leave this question unasked, but I do want to give the caveat in advance that none of us on this, I don't think any of us right now are medical doctors, unless anyone has like deep secrets or past life that I'm not aware of. All right, David's shaking his head. So someone's asking, for one-on-one meetings of about an hour long, like a coaching meeting that involves a small number of individuals who are wearing masks, is wearing a mask and being 6 feet apart still considered safe, or has this guideline changed? There has been some messaging around potential transmission regardless of mask wearing if individuals are in a closed room for an hour or longer. I will say I personally have not heard this. So not sure if other folks have or could point to any resources for this person to clarify their understanding. I would say if this is a serious concern for you as an individual, as a school leader, or any of your participants, welcome to the world of Zoom. And it feels like something where you can legitimately do it remotely and still have the accountability of that direct conversation. But David, Susie, Yomika, Jen, Lori had to step away briefly. Any thoughts? Anyone aware of revisions to guidance around transmission or mask wearing? All right, for folks playing along at home,
Department of Health question.
Yeah, we're getting some head shakes. We'll compile these questions for the medical experts questions and either come back to you with some answers or have a special guest on a future session so folks can ask those directly. SUNY, for SUNY school, so Susie, this one's coming your way. Q1 financial reports are due 11/16 in Epicenter. And it looks like fiscal transparency reports are due 12/31, according to the NYSED website. I thought the question is there also financial reporting due on 11/30? I thought the ESSA fiscal transparency deadline was now 11/30. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Do you know why someone would be seeing 12/31 in the NYSED website?
I'm not sure, but if they want to email me at david.frank@nysed.gov, I'll send out the email we sent via the charter school listserv last week.
Great. So Yvonne, everyone's understanding is that the ESSA fiscal transparency reports are due 11/30. So if bonus points for finding and pointing out and letting David point out to his web team, to SED's web team, that they have an error on their website. So with that, I think the last two questions in the Q&A are New York City specific, because I believe Allison's question is relating to a DOE school nurse. So Corey and Jen, I think I will turn it over to you all.
Great, thanks, Anna. Hi, everyone. So yeah, we can, I will just, we have a couple announcements. We can just take the question. Jen, I'll let you add in if you don't, but we have been on, many calls with the Department of Health, and Allison, I think you are doing exactly, which was my understanding as well, is that if it's non-COVID related, you're supposed to go to you are to take them to the nurse's office. So this might be something that you wanna highlight to the nursing supervisor. I don't know if Jen would have any other advice as, contact the charter school office.
I think that's dead on. Absolutely.
And then the next question about the health screening questionnaire to enter school buildings. So again, my understanding is all students entering the building have to do the questionnaire, and then to the extent a parent would enter, but I think most schools are trying to have parents not enter the school building at this point. They would not need to, like if they're just bringing the child to the door, you don't need to do it. But yes, if you had a parent meeting and they needed to come in, then my understanding is all they would be considered basically a visitor, and they would need to also answer the screening questionnaire to enter the building. With that, I will take off my health hat, because if you guys start thinking I can answer health questions, I'll be in trouble. But what I really wanted to say was, please, if you have health questions, I took down the one before about the 1 hour closed room. We will definitely send that on to the contacts at the NYC DOH. I think, as you all know, we are doing bi-weekly calls now with the New York City Department of Health and the DOE. So we don't have a call for this Friday, but we will have one for next Friday. So I'll make sure that question gets on the list as well. And if the anonymous attendee wants to email us in advance, we can try and get you the answer more quickly. We have had some, I am able to email, and sometimes we get responses quickly. So feel free to contact me if you need to. And I think the only thing I'll make as an announcement, and I haven't seen many questions on it here, is we know the schools in the yellow zone. We've been doing a lot of work with DOH and Test and Trace over the last few days to try and make sure that all schools who are in the yellow zone that have students in the building, or even if you don't, but you're just interested in what the process is, to make sure you get the information. So I would just make a plug. If you have not received communication from myself or the DOE charter school office, please reach out so we can make sure to loop you in. There was guidance released on Friday night. We've had several calls. So please get in touch if you do not know how to comply with the testing mandates for yellow zone schools. The other thing I will say, we were on a call this afternoon with some schools. We still don't know yet when the governor will announce updates to the testing zones. And by that, I mean if red and orange zones are becoming yellow, or if there are new yellow zones. But again, please watch your email from the Charter Center or NYC DOE, just so we can make sure that you get all the information you need. You can always email me separately, or the charter school office. But just, we know that a lot of that is going on right now. And with that, Jen, I don't know if you have any announcements, because I did not get any advance from schools this week.
I do not have any announcements or.
Yeah. And Stacy, we see your pre-K program question. Jen and I connected on it actually today. So yes, we're working on it, and we are hoping to get that resolved. So that's not the case. I had not emailed you that response yet, but now everyone can see it. And then another question on the screening questionnaire: is this applicable to students are not in the building, but a parent comes to pick something up? So I don't know. That's getting a little bit too in the weeds for me. I don't know if Jen wants to answer it, but I think we're looking, is the parent coming into your building, or can someone bring out what they're picking up?
Meet them at the door. Yeah, meet them at the door.
I would do that. Natalie's oath asking for the DOH meeting here. Yeah, I don't yet have it. As soon as I have it, we will post it, and we'll have a call next Tuesday. So we'll definitely make sure we post it here. There is not a call this Friday. Just want to be clear. We had the call last Friday. This Friday, there is no DOH call. So we'll be doing it next Friday. Yes, I will post the guidance right now, the link. Thanks, Valerie, for the reminder. I'm going to get that right now. I was just watching the chat and the Q&A, but let's see if we have any other questions. We might be all done. All right, with that, I'll turn it over to Yumiko.
Yumika, you might be on mute. Say that with love. As a frequent mute writer.
Okay. All right, so it looks like we're all set. All right, well, the only thing left to say is see you tomorrow at our conference. See you Thursday at our conference. See you Friday at our conference. Please visit our website, check out our photos for the conference, etc. And have a good night. See you in the morning.